Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the America's Founding Series, part of the P.A.S. Report podcast. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with other great patriots, because I am going to continue to rediscover our past, rediscover our founding, and ideas that shape the American identity. Particularly today, I want to talk a little bit about American grit, because we're going to journey back to one of the darkest hours of the American Revolution, a moment when the dream of liberty wasn't just struggling, it was freezing to death. Imagine the scene at Valley Forge, winter 1778, and don't just picture a historical painting. You need to feel it. Feel the relentless, the brutal, bone-chilling cold that cuts deeper than any bayonet, and hear the sound of nothing but profound despair, broken morale. The only other thing you're going to hear is persistent boots hitting the frozen ground, coughing of people that are afflicted with disease, men draped in torn rags, huddled around pitiful fires. They're tired. They're hungry. And men began to desert their cause. And for everyone who deserted, another person was lost to smallpox, typhus, some other disease. The Continental Army wasn't just losing battles. It was dissolving before Washington's eyes. And General Washington understood that this is a dire and desperate situation. He understood how his soldiers were hungry. He understood how cold it was, how sick they were, that there was no clean water. He knew that they needed money. He knew also that they needed training. They needed unified drills. They needed discipline. The stakes were crucial. And the stakes couldn't be any higher, because what we were about to witness could have been the end of the American experiment. The revolution was one disease outbreak, one final British attack away from becoming nothing more than a footnote in history. And then one day, the silence shattered. Into the gray, broken landscape rode an absolute contradiction, a brilliant, almost blinding splash of Prussian blue with a gold embroidered uniform. He was stocky, commanding. He spoke broken English, barked orders in French, and liberally coded it all in profanity that needed two translators. This was the unlikeliest savior of the American Revolution, a disgraced European officer carrying forged credentials and an unshakable confidence, Baron Frederick Wilhelm von Steuben. Now, how did this foreigner, carrying the baggage that he had of a scandal throughout Europe, turn a starving, untrained mob into an army, a respectable one that could beat the greatest empire on the earth at the time? How did one man's demand for discipline, grit, and excellence save the American cause? That is the extraordinary story we need to remember today. And when we look at von Steuben, he was born into an elite military world of Prussia, trained under Frederick the Great, the undisputed master of precision warfare. His military pedigree was impeccable. He had served in the 7 Years' War. He had seen command, but military life, it's not always fair. And von Steuben was a courtier. He became a casualty of palace intrigue. He was dismissed amid shadowy court rumors and political rivalries, some that he was gay. A soldier without war, he was left adrift, running low his prospects throughout Europe, and he was looking for redemption. America would be his miracle. Enter the stage, Dr. Benjamin Franklin. In Paris, Franklin didn't care about the whispers of scandal. He saw the military pedigree in him. He saw a certified genius in military organization, and Franklin helped him exaggerate his credentials, elevating his rank from captain to lieutenant general in the eyes of the Americans, and sent him off to George Washington. The catch was great. There was no promise of any pay. There was no guarantee of title for von Steuben. I mean, think about what von Steuben did. He sailed for America on simply faith alone. He was sailing into unknown territory. He was risking everything, his safety, his future, the rest of his reputation, whatever was left of it, on a ragged revolution that was almost certainly going to fail. If you run every single simulation with the American Revolution, Britain's going to win 99 times out of 100. And yet, von Steuben said that that's the risk I'm willing to take. And we need to think about that. He didn't have to fight for America. America, he didn't owe us anything. The odds of success were fairly slim. It was minute. But he believed in the promise of liberty. He believed in the potential of the struggling American experiment more deeply than so many people born here today. Think about that. You have so many in this day and age that are born here who take liberty for granted, that wouldn't be willing to fight for it. They think it will just always exist. How many people today would trade comfort for conviction? And that's exactly what von Steuben did. He arrived in February 1778, and he saw the filth that existed at Valley Forge. He saw the disease. He saw the total lack of structure to exist. His famous assessment was pretty damn blunt. He said, quote, "With regard to military discipline, I may safely say that no such thing existed in the Continental Army." He knew immediately what had to be done, and he knew it was going to be difficult. He didn't just need to train soldiers. He needed to forge an army, not just farmers, not just merchants, but an army that could go toe-to-toe with the British Empire, an army that could be respectable, an army that could instill fear in the enemy, fear in the opposition, and an army that understood how high the stakes were, that it wasn't just about defeating the British. It was about an experiment that would revolutionize the world. This is where von Steuben is going to play such an essential role. And when we get back from this quick break, we're going to dive into the incredible and comedic scene of how Baron von Steuben took 120 men, taught them how to fight, taught them how to survive, but most importantly, taught them how to win a war. So everyone, hang tight. We'll be right back. Are you ready to move easily and independently without pain and stiffness holding you back? Do you want to look in the mirror and see a hydrated glow instead of more fine lines and wrinkles? Well, discover Native Path Collagen, made with only type 1 and 3 collagen fibers. These are the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen found in your cartilage, bones, skin, hair, nails, and gut. They provide maximum benefits, and Native Path Collagen is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners. Plus, it's third-party tested for heavy metals, ensuring purity and safety. Completely flavorless, Native Path Collagen can be added to anything: coffee, smoothies, oatmeal, you name it. It doesn't clump, it absorbs fast thanks to its peptide formula. And the best part, Native Path offers amazing bundle deals at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a brand you could trust. They offer an 800 number for any questions you may have, and then you'll speak to a real person who's there to help. Visit getnativepath.com/PAS and start your transformation today. That's getnativepath.com/PAS. Welcome back to the PAS Report Podcast. Now, if you find this episode fascinating as I do, make sure that you subscribe and follow the America's Founding Series, part of the PAS Report Podcast. Also, share this episode with your family and friends. The more we grow the audience, the more programs we can put out there, and share it, because a lot of Americans don't realize the sacrifices it took to build this great nation, the exceptional nation. And we need to get back in touch with our roots, our founding, so that we could gain an appreciation. When we left off, we left von Steuben dressed in his immaculate blue uniform, staring down the chaos of Valley Forge. And he knew he couldn't lecture these men. He had to show them. He didn't start with the entire army. He started with 120 handpicked men, and he was going to make this his model company. The idea was actually simple, but at the time it was also revolutionary. Teach these 120 men who would then go back and teach their own companies, creating a cascading effect of, I know it's going to be shocking in this day and age, of excellency, high standards. And so every morning, the Baron himself was out there shouting. He didn't know the English word for wheelwright or present arms. He would bellow in French and German. And when that failed, he just loudly and creatively curse in a way where you had two translators trying to interpret what the hell he was saying. You had Captain Walker and Alexander Hamilton sitting there trying to translate his orders, and that were looking at von Steuben like he was a little nuts. One soldier who was remembering the scene wrote that the Baron would get in the most terrible passion, sometimes so great as to throw himself on the ground. He was relentless. He was a force of nature. And the soldiers laughed. They were amused by this flamboyant foreigner, but they were also learning. And that was the key thing. Von Steuben, he said something profound. He was, when he was talking about the American soldiers, he's like, in the military, you just give someone an order and they do it. But when it comes to an American soldier, you got to explain why. What he was showing was we always have this rebellious streak about us when it comes to Americans, that we're not supposed to just fall in line with blind obedience, that we question things, that we're inquisitive by nature. And so the soldiers actually appreciated him. And the drills were simple, they were precise, and they were very practical. They learned how to load a musket quickly, how to maintain a battle line, the proper use of the bayonets. Up until then, these soldiers mostly used the bayonets to cook meat over a fire. They didn't understand warfare. And the laughter began to turn into something else. What we started to witness in the Continental Army was a sense of pride. They saw that they were no longer a disorganized bunch of farmers and merchants, that they were becoming professional soldiers. They were moving, drilling, loading their weapons as one entity. And this is where von Steuben gave us an invaluable insight into the American spirit. You say to your soldier, do this, and he does it. But I'm obliged to say to the American soldier, this is the reason why you want to do that, and then he does it. That is the heart of the American system. Again, we don't demand blind obedience. We demand purpose. We demand understanding. This thoughtfulness, this need to know the why, even in the face of command, is a hallmark of the American spirit that values reason and liberty above all else. Von Steuben respected that. And from his model company, his system spread like wildfire. The 120 soldiers would begin to impact thousands of soldiers, and men would be drilled in rapid formations. You also had von Steuben overhauling the supply chains. He introduced methods of proper storage and inventory, and all this was codified into his famous drill manual, the Regulations for the Order and Discipline of the Troops of the United States, the Blue Book. This became the Continental Army's Bible, used for decades. Washington appreciated what von Steuben was doing. Washington was also steadfast in leadership. Von Steuben demanding precise standards, and you would see those two begin to merge. The army that marched out of Valley Forge was completely different. It was unrecognizable. They were no longer disorganized. The new army's first test would come just months later at the Battle of Monmouth in June 1778. The conditions were brutal. 95-degree heat. Think about it. Think about the clothes, the gear that they're wearing in that type of heat. American lines under General Lee plunged into confusion and retreat. Chaos was back, but this time, training ultimately took over. Washington arrived furious that the men were breaking the lines, and he rallied the men. And those troops, thanks to von Steuben's relentless drilling, held that line. They didn't run. They executed maneuvers under fire, performing precise countermarches and volleys that shocked the veteran British forces. This was completely different. They fought the British to a standstill in a display of discipline that no one on the British side thought was possible. So it was proof. The battle confirmed that the transformation from citizen to soldier to professional was complete. The revolution was saved, not by a sudden influx of supplies, but by a radical commitment to standards, excellence, and discipline. Von Steuben remained indispensable. He eventually helped plan the decisive fortifications at Yorktown, and he's ultimately going to die in America. And he dies nearly penniless, but he had found the redemption and the family he sought. And think about that redemption. That redemption is so important, part of the American spirit, that you could make mistakes, you could screw up royally, but you could get a second chance. That there is forgiveness. When von Steuben died, he left everything to his two former aides, were his main heirs. Some speculated that they may have even been his lovers. But what is the lesson for us today? Von Steuben didn't save the revolution with weapons or gold. He saved it with standards. He proved that liberty is not a gift of comfort. It's a reward of discipline. He showed us that grit is the essential guardian of freedom. His story stands as a powerful testament and a powerful rebuke to the comfort and decline that we're witnessing today. We live in a day and age that often celebrates laziness, celebrates the easy way out, celebrates excuses, celebrates victimhood. People love to be victims. An age where standards have been routinely questioned and lowered in nearly every single institution imaginable. But Baron von Steuben, this foreigner who staked his life on us, he reminds us that freedom survives only when citizens embrace difficulty and demand excellence. Not just from ourselves, not just from our children, but from our leaders as well. Excellence requires discipline. Discipline requires effort. It's hard. We have to look at that effort. Doing the hard things is necessary, especially when it's much bigger than oneself. And we must rediscover that willingness to endure hardship, to demand excellence, to demand performance, not just participation and participation trophies. When we're tempted to complain that America's best days are behind us, remember the winter of 1778. Remember the despair, the filth, the chaos, and the near collapse. Remember the man in the brilliant blue uniform who didn't speak the language, but who saw the potential, who taught us how to fight, how to stand tall, how a broken army became a nation. He didn't just train the soldiers. He gave the American spirit a military form. When you think things are hopeless, especially in this day and age, we look at places like New York City, the election means we have to work harder. It means we have to get more involved. It means we have to talk to more people and persuade more people. It means that we have to identify strong candidates that have our ideals, our vision, and actually help them. See, it's a lot easier to complain about election results, but ask yourself, what did you do? Did you get involved? Did you volunteer for a campaign? Did you make phone calls? Did you go door to door? Because if you didn't do those things, you have no right to complain. We need to step up our game here, just like von Steuben made the Continental Army step up its game. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, if you found the value in the story of discipline, leadership, and standards, American grit, please take a moment, subscribe, share this episode with a couple of friends who will then share it with others, leave a review, because it helps increase our discoverability so more people can hear the essential stories of the forgotten patriots who shaped America's founding. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back next week with a great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.